Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. Now if you're into hiking, camping, and backpacking, you've probably seen one of these stoves. Now I'm gonna call this a jetboil style stove. This is not truly a jetboil brand, but you'll know what I'm talking about. Pretty much the pot with the, external sleeve that helps to protect your hands. On the bottom, it has the coil, so it has good heat distribution. On the inside, typically, you're able to carry your fuel, maybe a pot stand, things like that. Well, these systems, for me, I've used them at length. I definitely like them. They're very effective, very nice, and at this point, this one's had a ton of good practical field use. I have to say, I like it quite a bit, but it's more traditional. It's sort of modern day. We've been using isobutane and different sort of fuel, propane and whatnot to heat our food, but as the world evolves and moves forward, well, this has me pretty excited. This here is the Joulle. This by a company, Stoke Voltaics. They reached out to me and said, hey, would you be interested in looking at our battery operated stove? And well, this here, when I saw it, I'm like, wait a minute. That looks exactly like what I'm used to seeing, only battery operated. And if that's the direction we're going, how effective is this going to be? How long is it going to last? Is it light enough and compact enough and comparable enough to become a replacement solution for my backpacking needs? And that's what we're here to find out today. And so what we're going to do, we're going to break this out. We're going to take a look at it in detail. I'm going to get it charged up. I'm going to do some practical field testing with it to see if it's even a viable option. I have to admit, I'm pretty excited about this. I like this company. I like the way they look. I like the way they're operating. It's just a matter of whether or not the functionality is there. So with that said, I have a whole bunch to do and a whole bunch to share with you. And if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about what I'm about to get into, do me a favor, stay tuned. And so before we get too far, I would like to say thank you very much to the people at Stoke Voltaics who did provide this for review. So as we get into this here, this is the first product in the Stokes. And so as we get into this here, this is the first product in the Stoke Voltaics lineup. They do have proposals for additional items. I've seen it. Looks like they're going to be maybe offering potentially a Kickstarter, or maybe it's just the other products aren't yet quite available. But this Joulle is currently available and just looks to be such a cool solution, and especially in comparison to what we've become accustomed to. Now, as we get this out of the package right away, I'm just going to go straight into comparisons. I want to get things sort of lined up side by side and really see where we stack up. And in order to do so, I'm going to start by taking the fuel, which you could go with a larger canister and it would fit in here. This is some of the sort of smaller canister size here, but what we're going to do, we're going to take this, get it set side by side, take a look at this in terms of the overall size. I'm also going to bust out the scale because before we even do anything, I'm curious, how does this stack up in terms of the overall size? This one here, this is a little bit larger in diameter. So as you take a look from the top, a little bit larger in terms of diameter. Actually, in all reality, it's also a tiny bit taller. Now, when you turn this to the side, initially, I thought that the Joulle was taller. It's not. When you hold it this way, you actually realize that because this stuff sticks out over the top, this is actually taller and larger in diameter. In terms of the actual weights here, we're going to take a look at this. So the Joulle coming in at 1 pound, 15 ounces. And that's fully ready to go. This jetboil style, 1 pound, 10.8. So, maybe 4 ounces, which, believe me, when you're talking about the backpacking crowd, camping crowd, a lot of times you'll hear them say ounces add up to pounds. I get it, but 4 ounces? Not negligible, quarter of a pound. but it's not a whole heck of a lot, and the Joulle is actually a little bit smaller. As we take a look through the rest of the features, interesting. Drink, eat, pop. So yes, you can boil, you can make food, and I guess you can pop popcorn, which, I did see that in their, their documentation and their advertisements, having a dedicated popcorn setting. I don't know if I personally need that. People might like that. Maybe it's a little bit gimmicky. Maybe it's useful. That's in the eye of the beholder. We're going to have to test these other modes, so the drink mode and the eat mode. As we look at the top, a nice strainer style lid, a little vent hole, and a pouring lip. So between that, having nice, overall cover, but the ability to vent some steam, pour out and strain maybe vegetables or pasta or things like that, or pour your hot liquids. That's awesome. Beautiful handle, nice little lashing point, really cool. And the sort of, exterior, very, very similar in terms of what we've seen in the past. My particular model does not have that exterior handle. However, it does have a very effective, nice and sturdy pot handle. So you can see here, away from the heat altogether, the ability to lift this, put it down, very sturdy. It does have a tiny little hole that's not really for pouring out of. It's kind of just a vent hole, and then a nice rubberized grip on the cap. If I had to pull this off while I was using it to boil, no problem. Grab this, no problem. No fear of getting burned. In this particular case, as we take a look at the Joulle, if I was going to get this cover to take it off, you probably need to be a little bit careful. I could see that being just a little bit close, but you do end up with this nice little string. So if you had to, you can get on that, pull that off, pretty much be safe. Not a big deal. Inside here, the user's manual. Here we have the actual power cord. What and why? Oh, come on, man. I mean, that's just a big honking power cable. That seems crazy to me. Is this not battery operated? If this is not battery operated, this has disappointment written all over it. This should be battery operated, USB Type-C rechargeable. I may be underestimating what this is. Let us see. Give me a minute. And so right away, I have to just take a time out and say, I am dumb. I kind of made a mistake, and this is truly not what I thought it was. This is deceiving. It is not camping gear. It is literally a plug-in unit. There's not a battery to this. This is not rechargeable. You literally have to plug it in. Now, Stoke Voltaics. Voltaics, like solar arrays, like solar panels, voltaics, makes me think, if they had a solar unit or a solar powered generator, so a solar powered battery generator, you could plug this in and use it anywhere, I guess, but their little advertisement literally says eat anywhere, drink anywhere, pop anywhere. I don't know. Not anywhere, because you're not going to do it in the wilderness. You're not going to do it on a mountainside, and you're not going to do it backpacking, because you have to plug this in. That's a bit of a downfall. Now, I have to admit, I am certainly not educated enough to know if battery power is enough to operate a unit of this size to generate enough BTUs in output to heat a volume of this size substantially, or at least enough to boil, or at least enough to cook a meal, and at least once, if not multiple times, such as what you would get out of a fuel source like propane or isobutane or whatever. So my point being, maybe the technology is not there yet, but if it is, why isn't this that? Why isn't this a battery-powered unit? Why do you plug it in? why don't I just recharge this and take it with me? Or have the ability to trickle charge this if I need to. So I'm a little bit confused. I'm not going to say I'm surprised because in retrospect, to be completely honest, I just simply didn't look at the literature close enough when they reached out because my mind immediately connected me to this. I don't know that if I looked close enough, I would have really even noticed the power cord in all of their photos. I mean, I would have assumed in some of them, yes, it's plugged in, but in others, I probably wouldn't have noticed. And in fact, you'll see individual photos of this being used in their literature not plugged in. So, I mean, if you need to pour this out, what am I going to do? Have it plugged in and cook and then yank the plug out of it to go and pour this? I don't know. I don't know. I started very excited about this product, and at this point, I am simply just confused. And so now as we get into the field testing with the Stoke Voltaics Joulle, here you're going to see I am taking my standard mug, the mug that I use every single day to make sure that, well, if I'm going to be making some coffee or something like that, I want to make sure I have at least enough to fill my mug, and lo and behold, I am very lucky. The exact amount in my mug is pretty much the max fill line for the Joulle. So here you can see I'm kind of going a little bit cowboy coffee here. I'm getting the grounds, putting them inside, and I'm basically going to get this thing set to boil. Now, the first thing, again, of course, this is a plug-in unit, so getting everything established the way I need to, nice and safe and secure and on the countertop. Now, there are a number of different modes on the Joulle. In this particular case, I am going to use the drink function. Now, keep in mind, each one of these functions does run just a little bit different. The drink function does run pretty much long enough to bring the max fill line all the way up to a boil, pretty much to a boil.
Oh, that is hot.
And at this particular time, you'll see I did get my coffee completely up to temperature, and I thought, well, what the heck? I'm basically just going to use the strainer lid, strain out the grounds, go for this. And I do have to say, it pretty much made a good cup of coffee. I was very happy with it. And so as I continued to pour everything out, I did get a little bit of silt in my cup, but all things considered, not a big deal. And it was hot, piping hot. So if you want a good hot cup of coffee, real quick and real easy, this will actually do it. But what about food? Keep in mind the fact that this does have, again, 3 unique different modes. So I wanted to do a little bit of an experiment. I took a look at the actual package of my survival food and said, well, this is typical to what somebody would usually eat on the trails. It was basically 2 full cups, a little bit more, of pasta, and I knew that I was going to run out of room inside the Joulle. So what I did was I split the recipe exactly in half. I set the Joulle to the eat function, and I figured this would be a great way to test this to make sure that it would actually perform. So with the appropriate amount of water, you'll notice that I added it into the Joulle, and it made it to the right appropriate level, which was within the maximum safe range. And so getting everything kind of underway, starting to heat things up, and really getting the meal prepared the way that I needed to. So cutting the actual package directly in half, and you can see that as I work my way through this, actually very effective. So the first thing in the actual instructions for the meal was to bring the water up to temperature, which I did. So you can see leveraging the Joulle, keeping it running, checking it from time to time. I did actually sort of get my broth up and going early on, making sure that I stirred it from time to time and that everything was dissolved appropriately, and it actually was working extremely well. So from that perspective, getting everything up to temperature with ease. But as we turn the corner and adding the pasta, that was the next part. This did have pretty much like a 15 to 20 minute time in the actual boiling water. So once I got the water up to temperature and adding the pasta, this did need to run for about 20 minutes. So you'll see getting everything stirred, fully established. And the good thing was, even with the water being at the max fill line, I actually didn't overflow the Joulle itself. You can see everything coming nicely up to temperature, the steam venting off. I would check it from time to time, and you'll notice it just is a nice dull little boil here. So as it cooks, couple of bubbles, and as long as you're careful, you can work on this easily. I did find that I wanted to stir everything from time to time. I was kind of curious about what would get sort of stuck to the bottom of the pot, but just being careful, stirring everything from time to time, and it actually was working very well. And so even though this is a prepared meal, I'm sure you could use this in a number of different ways. I do find that for the most part, something like a backpacking meal would probably be about the easiest. But of course, if you are somebody who's crafty, you could certainly do that. Now, after a while, this did run continuously. So in other words, in the eat mode, it ran continuously. I felt as though I wanted everything to sit, so I turned it off. I just let everything sit. And here you can see the pasta, perfect. It actually came out literally perfect. The meal cooked extremely well. So all in all, it did work wonderfully. Now, what I did find is a little bit weird. When you have to pour this out, you kind of need to unplug it, and then you need to sort of dump the meal out, and well, lo and behold, in the bottom, I did end up with a bunch of stuff that was pretty well stuck. So it did have me a bit concerned, because at this point you need to sort of think about, well, how are you actually going to clean this unit? The stainless steel pot is completely connected to the bottom of the coil. So what I opted to do was immediately fill this with water a little bit up and beyond the fill line, so that I could boil the water again, get it all up to temperature, and leverage the clean water to pretty much clean the pot while I ate. So everything coming back up to temperature while I sat here and ate and enjoyed my meal. I was kind of letting the Joulle do its thing, keeping that water boiled so that it didn't really have any of the mess sticking to the pot. And I do have to say, again, everything cooked very well. It's extremely hot. Definitely cooked. It's good. But it tasted great. It did the part, and it cooked with ease. So the fact that I could put it on that food mode really did allow it to cook continuously without the Joulle shutting off. And you'll see I used a very sort of low-tech method, just a nice wood spatula, something that wouldn't scratch, something that wasn't abrasive, and something that was going to allow me to kind of dig some of the mess off of the pot. So again, just making sure the water came completely up to temperature to allow me to do this work. And every now and then I just get a paper towel and sort of wipe things off. I would go as far as to say Stoke Voltaics is probably not going to condone this method. This is very hot. You need to be very careful. But for me, this was sort of the easiest way to go about this. And it makes me wonder what you would really do in a practical application if you were out in the field camping. If you were on a campsite, if you were running this off of maybe a solar powered generator, battery operated generator, or something like that, where you don't have really ready access to some of the things that you're going to need. But you'll notice after a little persuasion, this actually cleaned up very, very well. So all things considered, it worked very well ultimately for the cooking application. But next, it's snack time. What about that popcorn? Well, if you follow their instructions, there is sort of a maximum amount of popcorn that you can put in. Pretty much if you're filling the cap, that's about the theoretical limit. And then the next thing is you need to apply a little bit of oil. So I transferred all of my kernels into the bottom of the Joulle, and then at that point I was able to fill the cover with enough oil per their instructions. So I filled the little line. You'll notice that there's a segment within the lid that allows you to add the oil, which I did. Poured it inside, swished everything around, and at that point it kind of allowed me to get things started. So again, plugging this in, getting it all oriented, and then setting the mode ultimately to the pop mode. So again, with the different modes, you kind of want to pay attention, making sure that you have this set appropriately. Now, if you take a look, there is an additional add-on accessory that would help you start things up. I do believe that would probably help. In all reality, I would expect that that would probably ultimately help. But within a mere matter of minutes, everything did start to pop. All the kernels did start to pop. And you can see a little bit of activity inside the Joulle. So making sure I was able to kind of swish things around a little bit from time to time. Again, if you had that specialty cap, I bet you it would make a big difference. But things popping fairly quickly, fairly effectively, and you can see filling the Joulle in a mere matter of minutes with fresh, hot popcorn. This definitely worked, and it worked very, very well. You can see it was enough popcorn to start to push over the lid, but I did find that after a while the popping kind of stopped. Now, the actual Joulle itself did not turn off automatically from what I can tell. I did personally turn this off because I got a little bit concerned that it would start to burn the popcorn, and I didn't really want to get into a mess. So I made the decision to stop this on my own. But you can see that was enough popcorn to just push the lid off the top and really fill this from the bottom all the way to the top. But the reality is, again, this did not necessarily turn off on its own. Well, what do my kids think about this? So divvying this out, giving each one of them a snack, you'll see that there was more than enough to pretty much get 2 decent sized bowls going. There was some that was stuck in the bottom, but it wasn't burnt, and it wasn't really a problem. It was just kind of stuck in place, digging down with a spoon, loosening it all up, and then finishing my pour. I did really want to take a look at this to see how much of it was really effectively popped and how much had some leftover kernels. It wasn't a huge amount, but there were some reasonable kernels left in the bottom of the Joulle. So you'll see they did end up inside these bowls. Again, not a big deal. I think if I had that, specialty top, it would have made a big difference. But again, what do my kids think? You like it?
It's good.
You like it?
Yeah.
They love it. They were touting how this popcorn was literally some of the freshest that they have had in a long, long time. So in the grand scheme of things, the Joulle, very effective. And so, all right, guys, there you have it. A look at the Joulle from Stoke Voltaics. Now, again, obviously, in my intro, you saw that I got a little bit confused. I was kind of hoping this was going to be battery powered, but after using it, and I guess I'd say in the field application, but in reality, in my kitchen, how did it perform? What do I think? And how, as what this is, do I feel about it now? Well, I do have to say, this cooked very well. It prepared coffee very well. It actually made my food very well, and it popped popcorn to the point where my kids were like raving about how good and fresh it tasted. So from a functional standpoint, it did its job extremely well. Do I think it's practical? That's where things get a little bit difficult. Now I'm going to take a step back, because if this was battery powered, could it even be? Is battery technology there? I would say it's close, but not quite. I've done a little bit of research and kind of looked into things. Now, all in all, if I put 2 cups of water in this, 2 cups of water, in essence, from what I can tell, would require ballpark about 46 watt hours of power. So that's to boil 2 cups of water a single time from about room temperature to boiling. So if I needed to boil in this, it would require around 46 watt hours of power. Now, if you take a look at your typical 18650 battery, getting a close look here, well, this is 12.2 watt hours. So in other words, I would basically need 4 of these inside the base and built into this to simply boil water, 2 cups of water in this a single time, and then it would need to be recharged. So when you talk about practical limitations, we'd have to get really, really creative on what kind of batteries would go in here and what you would use this for and how often you could use it and when you need to recharge it. So that leaves the battery option also potentially a little bit limited, at least in this day and age and at the time of this video. So, my original thought of going to battery wasn't crazy. It's not like it's that far off, but it doesn't seem like it's quite there yet. So can I use this out in the field? Well, I'm the hiking, camping, and backpacking type of guy. So if I'm backpacking, absolutely not. This is out. You're not going to carry a solar generator or the ability to run this at length. Am I going to plug this into a car? Well, if you're going to be somebody that car camps, you will need a power inverter. So this, again, just a little bit limited in terms of who can use this. Now, the cable is fairly long. They did a nice job there. I'd say it's about 5 feet of power cord, which is cool. But for me, I don't know that I would necessarily go to this. And then I'm at a place where if I need to plug it in, would this be the go-to method? Hard to say. The other thing worth considering, now I need to take this outer sleeve off for just a minute, and I haven't really done this yet, but you'll notice as we take a look at this, everything is constructed together. Now, how do you clean this? If you take a look at the inside, this is extremely clean at this point. Now, I was very, very meticulous about after I finished cooking my food, I would put water in this immediately and boil the water again and use a real, easy going and kind of like a wood spatula or spoon to easily scrape the edges and get everything cleaned out, and then sponge it and get everything out of here while it was still warm. That to me was critical because this is a coil. It's to plug it in. You can't put this in the dishwasher. You need to be very strategic on how you wash this. So to me, that's going to be a little bit difficult for the camping environment. It was easy while I was in my home, but if you were camping, I could see it being very difficult, and I think this is going to get really dirty and then ultimately very difficult to get it clean. And so all in all, it's a cool idea. I mean, I don't know if you could use some other way to unclip this. If it had quarter turn threads underneath and you could unthread this and pull it out and then put it in a dishwasher or really clean it and then just put it back in and turn it back in and lock it back into the base. I could see that working, but where it's all integral, I mean, this is firm. That's going to be tough. So all in all, I was able to manage, I was able to do what I set out to do. I was able to make my food and popcorn and, the coffee that I wanted to drink very effectively in the home. It's about those other places where this is intended to be used that I'm just not so sure. So conceptually, it's cool. I don't know if it's really for me. I like it. I think it does a good job. Just hard to say. That's entirely up to you. And so again, thank you very much to the people at Stoke Voltaics who did provide this for review. And for the rest of you, if you like this content, do me a favor. Take a look at my Outer Limitless 2 channel, which is more on the tactical and firearm side of things. At this point, that channel is growing quickly. I have a ton of videos up there. So if you like what you see here on Outer Limitless, do me a favor and check me out on Outer Limitless 2. So all right, guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.